Oh my. I got to leave if you keep going. I can't. That's a lot. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for being here. Thanks to Carnegie Library for having me. Some of you might know I actually went to school in Pittsburgh long ago, down the hill at Carnegie Mellon, and used to walk by this library once a week when I would go to Giant Eagle to get my groceries. Take the 61C up here, go get my groceries, take the bus back, and would come to this library often, although it looks quite different now than it did 20 years ago when I was a student at CMU. For me, Pittsburgh is my first big city, which might sound strange to some people because I've heard Pittsburgh referred to as the Manhattan of Appalachia before. But really, for me, it was. I grew up in a very small place. Didn't really, our public transportation was, there was one bus, the KRT, that came twice a day to take you into Charleston, which was an hour drive on the bus. So like everything about what it meant to live in a city, I learned here. I wasn't like a lot of kids at CMU who kind of stayed on campus. I was so excited to have access to public transportation. I took it all over the city. I would go to the Strip every weekend to get groceries. I would just explore in lots of different ways. I tutored in the public schools. I tutored at Colfax. I tutored at Liberty and Shadyside. And so I really feel like during the time that I was here, I learned what it meant to like live in a city and be a citizen of a city, as opposed to living the sort of like borderline suburban rural existence, which is where I had grown up. And so coming here is coming home. It's where I grew up in a lot of ways. It's where I became an adult. And so it's really, really special. Anytime I'm able to come back and get through that Fort Pitt tunnel and I start crying, because, which happens to, I think, lots of people. That's not, there's like a movie where that happens, but it really is a very emotional experience for me to be here. I never say no to coming to Pittsburgh. I have an 18-month-old, so I flew in this morning and I'm flying back tonight. I commute to Pittsburgh is how I think about it. But I just am so grateful to be in this space with you, and I'm so grateful to you all for being in this room. I just want to get a sense from folks, how many of you have actually read Another Appalachia already? Okay, so I think what I'll do is I'll read a little bit from the book for folks who haven't read it, but I also thought maybe I'd share with you a little bit of the new work that I've been writing. I'm working on a second book, and it has been written largely in isolation at 3:30 a.m. in the rocker when I'm holding my child, and so I feel like this might be a good place to try out a little bit of those new words and see how they land on folks. But I'm going to start by reading an essay called Our Armor, which will kind of just get us started, and we'll have lots of time for questions and conversation too, because you all are more interesting than I am. So this essay is called Our Armor. It's in 3 parts. 1, my mother's morning preparations always took the same form. She emerged from the bathroom after her shower, the air around her perfumed by a heady mix of talcum powder and baby oil. Dressed in a blouse and petticoat, the softness of her belly just spilled over the tightness of the drawstring waist. From my perch on her bed, I watched her get ready for the day ahead, following her movements through her reflection in the mirror. First, she mercilessly attacked the knots in her waist-length hair with a plastic comb, then used her slender fingers to divide the hair into 3 equal sections, which she braided without looking, only pulling the braid over her shoulder when her arms could no longer reach far enough down her back. Next, she wrapped a sari around her body, pleating and draping 6 yards of silk with a tailor's precision. Last, she put on her ornaments, thin gold bangles that jangled solidly on her wrists, small gold hoop earrings, a black and gold pearl Mangalsutra around her neck, a black mascara chanlo on her forehead. Ensemble complete, she stepped out of our home and into the wilds of small town West Virginia. In such a foreign context, she opted to own her foreignness rather than hide it. On her walks to school, at her job as an accountant, during her service on the board of the local library, as a troop leader for the Girl Scouts. The chanlo was a marker of marriage for Indian women of my mother's generation. It has many names. Tilak and bindi are 2 of the most common, but in Gujarati, chanlo is a preferred one. Placed between the eyebrows, at the site of the 6th chakra, it's said to represent the 3rd eye and the notion of hidden wisdom. Indian women in India mark their heads with vermilion powder or with tiny stickers in a multitude of shapes, colors, and designs to match each of their saris. For my mother, none of those options were available. There was no Indian grocery store where she could purchase vermilion or cheap chanlo stickers. So she did what immigrants in America always do to survive. She modified, bought mascara from Rite Aid, perfected the art of drawing a tiny black circle on her forehead with a fuzzy, curvy brush, never left the house unmarked. By midday, the chandla would begin to crust, crumbled bits of mascara landing on her cheeks or chin. My mother carried her mascara in her purse. Even at the height of tax season, with its 16-hour workdays, at the first sign of crumble, she would take a moment to go to the bathroom, wash off the remains of the mascara, and reapply, determined to keep her third eye intact. I used to think my mother was an embarrassment. Her silky clothes and glittering jewelry contrasted so sharply with the hairspray stiffened perms and acid-washed mom jeans of my classmates' mothers. Our brownness in a white world already marked us as other. Why did she need to heighten the distinction? In Jersey City around this time, white supremacists, self-proclaimed dot busters, chased Indian women down the street, beat them when they caught them. The way to stay safe, I thought, was to blend in. And my dazzling mother, dazzling in both her style and her personality, never blended into the bland linoleum and polyester environs of 1980s West Virginia. I shushed my mother when she spoke to me in Gujarati in public, its pitch and tone so different than that of English. Speak English, I would demand, refusing to acknowledge her if she wouldn't. Children can be so cruel, the saying goes, and I was living proof. I curse my cruelty now when I can't find the vocabulary in Gujarati to communicate complex ideas, or when I wear a sari and my mother's stinging response is that I look weird because she can't reconcile my short hair with traditional clothing. I want to believe that my message of assimilation, pushed so strongly on my mother, was born of my need for safety, both my own and hers. But this safety came at tremendous cost. My mother's saris now gather dust in her closet, only worn on the most special of occasions. 2. Pamela's Circle was never a flag-waving neighborhood in the 80s and 90s. My neighbors' yards did not boast flagpoles. Their porches lacked flag holders. Flapping American flags were flown in schoolyards, not front yards. Flapping Confederate flags were flown in yards in other neighborhoods. I learned very early not to trespass through. But on my street, the main morning sounds were those of birds chirping and basketballs pounding on pavement, not red, white, and blue bunting flapping in the breeze. Until late September in 2001, that is, when my parents took a trip to Portland, Oregon. They sat in their rental car at a stoplight downtown when a group of white men approached, banged on the hood, and rocked the car. The men screamed epithets and curses, and the favorite phrase of white supremacists everywhere hurled at those of us who are not white: go back to where you came from. The light changed. My father slammed the gas pedal, charging forward, unconcerned about whether he ran over anyone's feet in the process. Later that same fall, on a Greyhound bus in Logan, West Virginia, less than an hour from our home, white passengers tackled an older Indian man and pinned him to the floor. They viewed his frequent trips to the bathroom as suspicious, instead of being the result of a failing prostate. They only removed their knees from his back when police arrived to take him off the bus. For 25 years, precisely the same amount of time he'd spent living in India, my father had worked to make West Virginia feel like home. And then, any glimmer of insider status he'd gained in 2.5 decades evaporated between the hours of 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. on September 11th, 2001. After their trip, my father promptly went to Castro Hardware and purchased a massive American flag decal emblazoned with the saying, "Proud to be an American." He taped it to our glass front door, leaving sticky residue marks of many crooked attempts before he felt satisfied that it was straight. Another flag got taped into the back windshield of his blue Toyota van. A third got placed in a holder on the porch. 640 miles away in Madison, Wisconsin, I compulsively went across the street every afternoon to check on the Punjabi Sikhs who ran the gas station, using them as a proxy for my parents. 4 days after 9/11, Balbir Singh Sodhi, a Punjabi man my father's age, was murdered at his gas station in Arizona by Frank Silveroque, a white supremacist who shouted, "I'm a patriot, and I stand for America all the way," when arrested. Sodhi's brown skin and turban were all it took for him to be interpreted as a threat, as a terrorist, as someone whose murder was justified. I did not believe my father's flags would keep him safe, but I could not ask him to take them down. I struggled with his assertion of patriotism towards a country that had only shown me ambivalence regarding my existence, and simultaneously lived in fear of what might happen to my parents if the Confederate flag wavers of other neighborhoods found their way to our street, so profoundly apolitical and welcoming up to this point. My parents' professional lives as doctors and accountants may have buffered them from the worst of West Virginia's ugly racism before 9/11. I, on the other hand, felt its effects from the age of 6, when a chubby, rat-tailed kindergartner approached me in the schoolyard, slapped me across the face, and hit me with the ugliest of racial slurs, illustrating that in West Virginia, there were only 2 categories that seemed to matter when it came to race: white and not white. And again, when fans of the opposing middle school basketball team screamed Mr. Miyagi and Speedy Gonzalez and where's your papoose each time I walked onto the court, showering me with trash and epithets, then pissed on our school bus at the end of the game. And again, when a high school classmate with his heavily gelled mullet and black Metallica t-shirt pulled over his enormous belly called me camel jockey every day during shop class, and our teacher pretended not to hear him. Until 9/11, my parents did not question their belonging in America. America provided them work, wealth, the opportunity to live a kind of life impossible to imagine in India, and to bring family members in India into its slowly growing middle class. Meanwhile, I, exposed daily to the ugliest manifestations of American ignorance, received continual messages that I did not belong. If the flag could protect my parents from this venom, and from the thick, incapacitating doubt that such venom shuttles to the brain, I would not ask them to take it down. 3. I can't remember when I began to openly flaunt my West Virginia roots, to wear t-shirts emblazoned with images of West Virginia and the lyrics to Country Roads, to proudly share every historical and cultural factoid I had collected during my time living in the state and have continued to collect after leaving. I can, however, remember the first time a white man in West Virginia told me, go back to where you came from, at a gas station in Sissonville in the fall of 1995, in between chugs from his 40. And the second time on the side of the road in Nashville, Tennessee in the summer of 1996, screamed out a car window. And the third time at Oglebay Park in Wheeling in the fall of 1998, where a leering cowboy held his hand up and said, how, mocking a Lakota greeting. He asked me what tribe I was from, and when I responded that I was not that kind of Indian, proceeded to spit hate in my face. And again, in the summer of 2019, when the newspaper headlines announced that our white male president scolded a group of brown and black congresswomen using that very same phrase. I hate the way my body responds to acts of racism. Where others are able to stay calm and unaffected or angrily fight back, I simply disintegrate. My eyes blur, my temples pound, and I catalog counter arguments in my mind, but my dry mouth, the fear squeezing my chest cavity, prevents me from saying a word. I want, in those moments, to assert my Americanness, my West Virginianness, to pull out the birth certificate detailing my birth at Thomas Hospital in Charleston, West Virginia, in the heart of the Kanawha Valley. That muddy river valley, those green mountains, those smoking chemical stacks, they are where I come from. So much so that I'm writing this essay in a room in my house entirely dedicated to the state of West Virginia. The walls are decorated with a wedding ring quilt, a painting of the New River Gorge, and a map of West Virginia that dates back to the late 1880s. My light source is a lamp from the Blankville Glass Blowing Factory in Milton, 20 minutes from where I grew up. I want to show my doubters that I'm an expansive encyclopedia of knowledge about West Virginia, most of which I learned in my 8th grade West Virginia Studies course, or have memorized from the actual West Virginia Encyclopedia, my favorite coffee table book. Do you know your state bird and state animal? Come on, Pennsylvania, some people are saying yes. Well, mine are the cardinal and the black bear. Can you name every celebrity to come out of your home state? Probably not, but I can, and I'm going to. Chuck Yeager was born in Myra long before he flew his plane so fast that he broke the sound barrier. Jerry West was from Cheyenne, our Zeke from Cabin Creek, years before he made the NBA All-Star team 14 times. Walter Dean Myers was born in Martinsburg before he became a phenomenal writer for young adults. Henry Louis Gates and his brilliant brain spent their formative years in Kaiser. Randy Moss first played football in the backyards of Rand, and Lou Holtz did the same in Follansbee. And Jennifer Garner wasn't born in West Virginia, but she lived there for most of her childhood before kicking ass on ABC's Alias, where her code name on missions was often Mountaineer. There are Americans whose ancestors have lived in the same state for centuries who don't always know as much about their states as I do. This is a fact. And it is also a fact that knowledge is not the marker of belonging in America that I want it to be. When congresswomen born and raised in the United States are being told to return to the places they came from on the basis of their skin color and their last names, I find myself questioning when or whether our country will ever see people who look like me, my parents, or my child as American. In the absence of a body that knows how to effectively respond to racism, I wrap myself in my home shirt with the state of West Virginia replacing the O, in much the same way that my mother wrapped herself in 6 yards of silken fabric, or my father wrapped himself in the US flag. As though fabric can protect us, as though fabric will make it impossible for angry men to see through the cloth to the skin below. Okay, and then for this, I have to do this on my phone. I apologize. This is where my writing happens now, largely in my notes app in the middle of the night. I'm just gonna read you a little bit of the beginning of this new project that I'm working on, which I became a mom in November of 2022. But I'm the non-gestational mother of my child. My partner carried, and so this new collection of work is about that. It's about what it means to mother without the trappings of motherhood that we associate with it. And so I'm just going to read you. These are all flashes and fragments because if you've been a parent, you know that your brain stops working and you can only think in flashes and fragments. And so this is sort of like a real time attempt to capture what it is like to parent in this time. And my idea is to stop when she turns 2 in November of this year and to kind of have it be that it's just the self-contained first 2 years of parenting. So this first essay is called Parenthood Made Me a Mediocre Poet. Good. All right. Look at that. I used to think in paragraphs. Now I think in phrases, fragments, groups of words pushed tightly together in my mind so that I won't forget them before I get a chance to write them down. I used to count pages. Now I count lines. Instead of asking myself what more I could add, I ask, is this enough? Does it count? Can it stand? I used to run from white space. Now I run towards it. Blank space on the page mirrors the blank space in my mind, the gaps I need you to fill in because I'm too spent to do the filling for you. I used to think in linear narrative, in situation and story, in expository and reflective voice, in questions that I could attempt to answer. Now I think in images, in muscle memory and muscle ache, in odes and sestinas and centos. Oh, who am I kidding? I couldn't differentiate a sestina from a cento, even if you sent me down with examples and definitions. But I used to fill pages and then pare away. Now I start pages and stop partway through. Walk away, interrupted, unsure if or when I will return. I want parenthood to make me a poet, to give me permission to write in this sparse and fragmented way. But more than anything, I want parenthood to make space for my words in whatever form or length they take. All right. These are short, so you don't have to clap in between each one because you'll be clapping a lot, but I'll read you just a couple more. This next piece is called Preparation. The day before you were born, your mom and I made 30 burritos, labeled them with the date 11/21/22, stocked the freezer full. My therapist, who specializes in perinatal and postpartum mental health, told me that we would need one-handed food in the weeks after your birth, and I took her at her word. Filled our fridge and freezer with meals easily consumed while trapped under a sleeping baby. The burritos are long gone, but your mama saved one of the Ziploc bags to remind us of how we spent the night before your birth, together at the stove to fill and roll and grill and freeze the meals that would sustain us. The first contractions that pushed you into the world began while we ate a few of those burritos for dinner that night. The year before you were born, I quit a job I'd held and loved for close to 2 years. I'd been a teacher who had no boundaries, who stayed at work until my car was the last one in the parking lot, who worked weekends and summers and vacations, who equated martyrdom with excellence within the profession. And I couldn't understand how I would do that boundaryless work and be a present parent to you. I had to choose. I chose you. The summer before you were born, your mama and I overhauled the design of our 2-bedroom apartment to make room for you, changed the guest room into your nursery, swapped the futon for a crib, paid a handyman to construct an enormous IKEA Calyx cabinet with 16 cubbies that we used to store your clothes and toys and shoes and diapers. Bought a cabinet bed for the office that we can pull out when guests come to visit. Swapped our standing bookshelves for ones attached to the wall too high for you to reach, too high for me to reach too. Called our clothes and combined our closets to make space for all the stuff, the wildly disproportionate amount of stuff associated with the arrival of a tiny human. The fall before you were born, I wore a 12-pound weighted vest on my walks around Jamaica Pond. Your mama bore all the weight of you, and I couldn't quite get my head around your arrival. My body wasn't changing, so I changed it. Said it was preparation for the strength I'd need to carry you, which it was, but also unsaid was that I'd never know the way it felt to hold you within my body, so I tried to understand what it felt like from without. The month before you were born, I read Haroon and the Sea of Stories out loud, my mouth hovering close to your mama's belly. I wanted you to know the origin of your name. wanted you to hear it for the first time within the womb, so that perhaps you'd have some sensory memory of that first time you heard it without. All these things we did to prepare, and yet there was nothing we could have done to prepare for the ways in which you'd forever alter our lives. All right, and then this is what poets feel like. I'm not usually a poet, and so I'm always like, oh, poets just keep reading things, and you look at the time, and you're like, wow, all right. All right, I'm gonna read two more, and then we'll talk about questions. This piece is called "That's Not How This Works." When Laura's preparing for her first round of IVF, the clinic calls to say, your husband Neema needs to undergo blood testing for STIs. Husband in 2022, I raged to Laura. That's not how this works. On a road trip from New York to Boston, my mother-in-law waits until Laura's in the bathroom at a rest stop to ask questions about the sperm donor. What's his nationality? She wonders. I can't prune the thorns from my response. Does it matter? That's not how this works. The summer before Kahani is born, a friend's overly inquisitive mother-in-law corners me when I bring her a drink in the yard. Proceeds to ask questions that cross every boundary. How do we choose a donor? What will we tell our daughter? I fawn and answer, even though I don't want to. Feel ill by the end of the conversation. When I tell Laura about the violation afterwards, she tells me that I need to thicken my skin. People are going to ask all kinds of things, she says. We just have to be prepared. I tell her, that's not how this works. I can't just not feel complicated about our child's origin story, especially when I'm continually being treated as though my role in it has no value. Moments after Kahani emerges from the womb, her head covered in a carpet of thick black hair, the nurse says to me, she has your hair. Even in the throes of joy, my thoughts are interrupted by this phrase. That's not how this works. At Pleasant Cafe, an old school Italian place in Rosendale, way past bedtime on a Friday night, an older gentleman walks by, admires Kahani's cuteness, and remarks, well done, you two. After he walks away, I mumble into my red sauce, that's not how this works. I want people to know the right things to say, to not always be saying things that erase and obscure, that locate worth in places where it doesn't belong. But as the world tells me again and again, that's not how this works. Thank you. All right. I'll read one more. This is called Drowsy But Awake, Objects of My Early Parenting Rage. It's a list. 1, whoever invented the phrase drowsy but awake. There is no such thing, at least not for my baby. There is asleep and there is awake. And there is put me down while I'm awake and I'll scream a kind of scream that goes directly to the center of your nervous system and sends every nerve jangling into a part of the body where it's not supposed to be. 2, the person who came up with the phrase sleep like a baby. Did that person ever have a baby? Did they ever try to make that baby sleep? Because nothing about baby sleep is easy. Nothing. My feet hurt from walking 20,000 steps a day. 10,000 wearing the baby for one nap, another 10,000 with her in the stroller for the second, trying to get her to sleep. There's a spot in the upper middle of my back that I never noticed before, but that twinges every time the baby screams between sleep cycles, and I have to soothe her before putting her back down. Her body is sandbag bearing down on my torso. 3, every white and pastel colored parenting blog with light typeset fonts set up to offer sleep advice. Smiling white women announce, you're doing great, mama. Offer a modicum of decent advice, only to cut off halfway down the page, interrupted by a pop-up window that says, want more helpful advice? Sign up for my sleep class / pay for my sleep book / hire me to consult you on sleep. It will only cost you $100 or $300 or $500 to do so. 4, Adam Smith and Ronald Reagan, and every other proponent of capitalism who has made it so that care is commodified in this country, so that sleep is commodified. We live in nuclear families. We parent largely in isolation. We get parental leave in laughable quantities, if at all. And when we need support, we either have to buy it, build it through sheer force of will, or go without. Sleep consultants charge $300 for a phone call. When we lived in intergenerational communities, aunties used to offer this help for free, sometimes too much, sometimes more than we wanted. but give me a cross boundary over never needing to set a boundary because no one is crossing it anyway. 5, the random lady on the street who interrupted her phone call to yell at me to put a hat on that baby. I was wearing my baby in an effort to get her to go to sleep. We'd just gone through a period of nerve-jangling screaming, and I'd finally gotten her to doze off. Either that, or she'd cried so much she made herself pass out. Unclear. She wore a cotton footie and a fleece footie over that, sat ensconced in the furnace formed by my body heat and her own. Part of me wondered if this is what care looks like in the context of capitalism. A mid-phone call scolding, and then we keep it moving. A superficial move towards auntiedom, but no substance beneath it. 6, the peddlers of blackout curtains and white noise machines, of the notion that you can keep a radiator heated, poorly insulated 150-year-old home precisely between 68 and 72 degrees, of the idea that sleep must be curated and that if your baby isn't sleeping, it is because you failed to curate. Never mind that your baby starts to scream every time you turn on white noise or draw a curtain, that she rejects sleep cues and wake windows and every other piece of pseudoscience being peddled, and instead reminds you daily that parenting is an exercise in relinquishing control. Drop the rope, my therapist tells me. You can offer a nap, but you sure as hell can't make her take one. She needs her own sleep website where there's literally only that sentence on the page. 7, the separate nursing from napping crowd, who tell us that babies should be independent, should know how to fall asleep on their own, even when they can't eat or move or toilet themselves independently. On a 10-hour train ride in India once, I sat across from a nursing mother whose baby just stayed on the breast, intermittently nursing and napping. The baby stayed calm. The mother didn't have to engage in back spasm-inducing bounces on a yoga ball to get the child to sleep, and yet they're wrong. My friend Annie reminds me, separating nursing from napping is an American thing, Neema. People all over the world just let their babies nurse all day. And when I ask myself, who does this narrative serve? I'm reminded that Americans believe babies should be independent so that their mothers can return to work more quickly. That capitalism, again, is the driver of good parenting narratives in this country. 8, have I mentioned the drowsy but awake people yet? All right, I changed my mind. I'm gonna read one more because this one kind of weaves the. I mean, I can keep going. This one kind of weaves queerness and Appalachianness and a lot of different things together. This is called Motherhood Anew. Maybe because I couldn't let myself fully acknowledge your existence before you were born, because my body had failed to make you, because the road to you was unmapped, rocky, full of wrong turns and potholes, because all anyone wanted to ask me about was the donor, his race, his appearance, his genetics. Maybe because I didn't feel you growing in my body, I couldn't fully confront my motherhood until you were actually here. Maybe because I couldn't give my brain permission to prepare for you ahead of time, now I find that I become a mother again and again, rediscovering my motherhood each time. It began the moment I held your body against mine, buried my face into your thick black hair, still damp with blood and amniotic fluid. I held my breath for 40 weeks, waiting for you to arrive, inhaled deeply only when you were in my arms, your bare skin alongside my own. That earthy scent permeated my nostrils, lingers there even today. I smell it each time I press my nose into your scalp and breathe in, the first reminder of my motherhood. I became a mother again the moment we finalized your name, having stalled the birth registry as long as possible, and you became our Kahani, our story. Named for Rushdie, for the town built in his imagination. A town that has lost its stories and forgotten its name until a boy named Haroon went and found them and reminded that town that her name was Kahani. You'll write your own story, but you'll carry our names with you. I became a mother once more the first night we brought you home, when you woke up every time we put you down because we didn't yet know how to put you down, and I stayed awake in the rocker for hours between feedings, let you sleep on my chest, put your knees before mine. My hoodie was spotted with your spit up, and I emerged in the morning bleary-eyed and exhausted, fearful of what my life had become, yet still enthralled by your existence. We'd waited so long, fought so hard, and now you were here, irrevocably ours. In the absence of biology, I find my motherhood in sharing my identity with you, and seeing glimmers of that identity reflected back to me. Each time you wear a onesie sent by West Virginia friends that declares you mountain made or calls you a little Appalachian or plasters a y'all across your chest. The first time you wore the Najadia bought for you by your Swati Masi, delicate black and gold beaded bracelets designed to ward off an evil eye I refuse to believe in, but want to shield you from nonetheless. The day your hair got long enough to style the bangs into the same spiky upward swoop I wear mine in, and we took hair twin pictures. The afternoons when we walk around Jamaica Pond and I show you the juvenile eagles, ducks and geese, snapping turtles, hooded mergansers, your eyes are not strong enough yet to see. I show you nonetheless. We'll show you each season until you're able to show me. The witching hours when I bounce you as we listen to Bill Withers, to Dolly Parton, to Lata Mangeshkar, to Bad Bunny, to Zap Mama, to John Prine, to Brandy Carlisle, to the soundtracks of my ancestry, my geography, my present day. Each song a fragment of colored glass. I pour them out on the floor, arrange and fuse them to one another in an effort to create a coherent whole. One set of shards, my Gujarati roots, another, my Appalachian upbringing, a third, 2 decades teaching middle school students in Boston. If I hold the resulting mosaic up to the light, up to your face, maybe you'll know who I am. Maybe you'll someday know who you are. In the absence of biology, I find my way to mothering you each day anew. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being my guinea pigs. I have not really had this first book was written like in community. People were reading all of it the whole way through. And the second one is like not that at all. So I'm grateful to you for being willing to be guinea pigs. You can tell me afterwards if you thought it was terrible. I can handle it. I know that it hasn't seen anyone's eyes besides mine. But I want to leave time for folks who have questions. I'm happy to answer them. If you don't, I can go back and read some more. Yeah.
I was wondering if you have a to people now when they ask about this, and if you like have a way of politely starting to just shut it down before it becomes triggering and upsetting.
You know what's interesting is people have stopped asking. I think it's I'm thinking about it now, so it's not like this may not come out fully formed, but like it's almost like before my daughter was born, like people had that paradigm of like this outsized presence of the donor. But it's like now that she's here, like it's very hard to question that I'm her parent because like I'm with her all the time, right? And so I think that it's become less of a question. I don't think it means it's gone away. And I actually feel like for me, the question now is like, what's the conversation that I have with her? And like, how do we talk together about like our family, and how do I prepare her for what will inevitably be the questions that she's going to face, right, in school and as she's in the world. But in this interim period of these 18 months, it actually feels like I've experienced that question less and less since her birth. So that's it. It hasn't prepared me to know how to respond to the question better, but it's like I get asked the question less. I don't have a succinct response. It still makes me very angry. Like it just feels like it's so hard. Like we are living in a time where people using different alternative fertility means is like more and more common, and yet like the dominant narratives around it are still really erasing of all of those experiences. So yeah, I don't feel like I have a good response. I just haven't had to answer it in the same way. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Did she call you?
She calls me Ummi. So it's Ummi is it means mom, but not in the language that my family speaks. Because I couldn't figure out how she would call me the names that are used in the context, like because those names are so gendered for me. And Ummi is also gendered. It's Urdu for mom. But it's like not my experience of gendered. So it's like it was easier for me to be like, this still sounds like it comes from the culture that I'm from writ large, right? It still has like that lineage associated with it, but it doesn't have the immediate associations with a very gendered kind of mothering that I have around like the names that mothers are called in my community. It took a long time to figure out. And then it was like, well, is she even going to use this, right? Because you can come up with any name you want. You can like intellectualize it all you want, and kids are their own people. But she does call me Ummi, and she's also very sassy and has learned that like when she wants to be sassy, she like shortens it. So she calls me right? And then heard my partner calling me Neem, which is her nickname for me. And so now she's got even. And then so when she's really trying to be sassy, she goes Neem. So yeah, she's a sassy child, but me is what she calls me. Yeah.
And another about like the people that raise like I've asked you before, but the arrival of the daughter town.
Yes and no, right? It doesn't look the same. Like she doesn't have aunties the way I had aunties. And that is a thing I will always be sad about because those aunties were my moms. But I think I've had to like reframe how I think about what it means to be someone's auntie and like look for that care where it comes, right? And so and that's taken some work because it's really easy to just be like, this is the thing I don't have. I don't have it. I don't have it. I still do that sometimes. But you know, we have like our next door neighbor is her kids live away and she's in her 70s and she is like Kahani's grandma. Like she, you know, like she plays that role in a really beautiful way. And Kahani calls her abuela. And my best friend in Boston, who I've known for 20 years, like her daughter, she calls her Didi. She's white, but she calls her Didi and like loves her and like feels like you can feel this like beautiful sisterhood between them, right? So I think what I've had to think about in this part of identity is not actually that different from some of the stuff that I was talking about in another Appalachia, where there it was like me trying to figure out how to take things from what my parents were imbuing in me as like this is what Indian culture is and this is what it looks like, and I'm like, but we're in West Virginia. How does this work? Right? It feels like a new iteration of that, which is like this is how I was raised and what it looked like. It's not going to look the same here, but can I recognize the feelings when they're happening? And I feel like I do. Yeah.
I did not know what I was going to ask you before I came here, but this is definitely not it.
Okay.
I love how you your to bear different about your
Oh. You want to tell a publisher that? Oh.
And I'm curious.
You're like my favorite human.
A perinatal therapist. Were you planning to have the baby, or once you had already? How you?
Yeah. So this is gonna sound funny, but I actually started seeing my perinatal therapist before the book came out, before the first book came out, because our fertility journey was very long, and so there were like buckets. Like there was in this second book, there's like a bucket that's about work. You kind of heard the buckets a little bit. There's a bucket that's about fertility and queer parenting, and there was a bucket about like publishing a book. That was a thing that was stepping really far outside of the bounds of what was like culturally like appropriate or acceptable for people in my community. And so I went to her kind of like because those three buckets were all playing out at the same time. And in a way, like having a book is kind of like having a baby. Like it's definitely like it's like this process that goes for a really long time, and then like it's out and you don't have any control over it. It's like okay, it's doing what it's doing. I don't know. At least that's how I feel about my child. So yeah, I mean it. I think everyone should have a perinatal therapist. I think everyone should have a birth doula and a postpartum doula. And if I ruled the world, those things would all be covered by, well, you wouldn't even need insurance because we just all have healthcare, and that would be part of what happened. But I feel like in the second book, like that relationship is driving and shaping so much of the meaning that I'm making around parenting. That it's like our conversations that sort of help me kind of get my head around how do I make sense of this, you know? And I have a lot of like, how do I questions all the time? Like, how do I continue to hold on to like my Appalachian identity in Boston when I don't like, what does it even mean to share that with my child? Like, how do I continue to sort of like engage with my writing life in the context of having a dictator that consumes all of your waking hours? And you know, like she's just always like, you do it by doing it. Like that's just like she just says it to me all the time. She's like, you're doing it. Like it's not a how do I. She's like, you're here, right? Like you're doing it. Like it's hard, but there's not like some answer that like I can give you. It's just like the way you learn to do the things, the way you figure it out is just by like going through it, which I think is true for parenting as well, right? Like you can read all those books and read all those blogs, but ultimately, like you do it by doing it. So yeah, thank you for the work that you do. It is profoundly important, and yeah.
I build on what you said. You're right, but you do need the books too. The books need to be there. And I became a non-gestational parent while working in a coal mine here in Pennsylvania 33 years ago, when I was about your age.
Yeah.
And I've never heard people talk openly about that experience. My partner gave birth to both of our children, and I went through by myself, quietly in my own head, the experiences that I'm so grateful to you for putting out there so that we can actually have conversations about them, because there are lots of non-gestational parents
absolutely
who've never, most of us, talked with each other or had a chance to go through those kinds of discussions. So that's gratitude. And I have a question for you that may seem completely unrelated. You spoke about how your mother and your father wrapped themselves in particular articles of clothing in order to be able to make a statement that they thought was important. And you chose what you're wearing today.
I did.
Would you be willing to say something about that?
Yeah, for sure. I always wear shirts that are either about West Virginia or about books when I go to book events. I have a shocking number of both of those kinds of shirts. Don't ask my partner how she feels about that, because she has a lot of feelings about all the shirts. We don't live in a big house, so it's valid. Yeah, I mean, I think we are living in some really stressful times around our freedom to read and our ability to choose books freely. And we're in a library right now, and librarians and teachers have been under a kind of attack for the past several years that is just like ridiculous and violent, and has made their work profoundly difficult. Like, the whole concept of a library, like, libraries come out of the tradition of abolition in this country, right? The idea of a library is that, like, it was a place where you could go to learn freely in a time when the freedom to learn was not being extended to everybody. And so the idea that we are in this moment where libraries have become politicized and turned into sites of attack, where someone wants to decide what books someone can get off the shelf and what books they can't, and what books are appropriate and what books are not, to me is really, it's alarming, to say the least. Like, I think it points to a path towards fascism that makes me very, very, very anxious about this coming election, and about just sort of like what's happening to our understanding of like what it means to have freedoms, right? That, like, in some ways the freedom to choose for yourself has been replaced by some people's freedom to restrict what you have access to. And that's true about books. It's true about reproductive rights. It's true about gender affirming care. It's true about lots of things, that freedom has really gotten, that word doesn't mean what it used to mean. And so, yeah, I choose to wear the shirt to kind of push on that, and to just make us all think about, like, you showing up here is really important. You showing up here again and again and again is really important. When there's not an event, like you going and like just even telling the librarians who are in this room, of whom I understand there are a bunch. Can you raise your hand if you're a librarian? Yeah. Right? Are library board meetings public in Pittsburgh?
There's like a public.
Okay, so like you going to that library board meeting to affirm the work that librarians do, you going to your school board meetings to affirm the work that teachers do, is so important. And it's not a thing that we are accustomed to doing. Most of the time in those spaces, the people who are there are the people who are complaining. I have been the person at school committee complaining. I wrote a whole thing about it, right, in the last book. But like, we are in a moment where affirmation is profoundly important, because the reality is the vast majority of people are not down for what is happening. But we've been real quiet because we didn't know that we needed to protect the right to choose a book off the shelf. Like, that seemed like a thing that was like a given. And we're clearly seeing that things we assume were givens are not. So, I mean, yeah, coming here again and again, sending the letters, going to school committee, going to the library board meetings to say that you support and affirm those freedoms, I think is just one of the most important things we can do right now. And Kip, I just wanted to say, to your point, like, I think that writing another Appalachia taught me about the power of mirrors in a way that I didn't understand for myself because I didn't have any. So I wrote that book to make a mirror for me, right? But ever since writing it, I hear from young people what it means to them and the way in which it makes a home for them in the world that they didn't feel like existed before. I got a message this morning before I got on the plane that like made me cry. That was a young girl who's Chinese American and grew up in Northern West Virginia and was like, I just ran across your book in a bookstore and like I can't believe it exists. And I can't believe like what it's creating for me or how it's making me think about my relationship to this place. I think now that I know that, like that feels like the work again and again, right? Is like, yeah, there are not a lot of mirrors for people like me, but like I can make mirrors. And I think that's the work I want to do, or that's what I think books can do, and the kind of books I want to write. Yeah, in the back black shirt, right there. Hey, we're the same. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that um, that is absolutely a real challenge, right? Like I feel like when I would interact with family members in India, like it just was like a constant making fun. Like, oh, you speak Gujarati, but like you don't speak it right. And I'm like, well, the only people who speak it are the people in my house. So like, what do you want? Like, I don't get to go to school and learn this. I'm doing the best I can, right? This sort of measuring of like you're not enough. Um, I think for people who are bicultural, this sort of feeling of like I'm not enough of anything is a really, really hard feeling, right? And at the end of the day, like your home is where you choose to be and where you are. And like I think that it took a really long time for my parents to understand that like India wasn't my home. West Virginia was. West Virginia is. I live in Boston. I've lived there for 20 years, but it's not home. West Virginia's home, right? Like, so I had to do a lot of work in terms of understanding that like their experience and my experience are not the same thing. They came to this country as adults. Their entire identity formation happened in another country, right? And if they wanted me to have that, then like probably wasn't going to happen by being here. I probably needed to grow up there. But I was here and I had to navigate here and survive here and in some cases assimilate, and because that was survival um, in lots of ways. And I also think that for me, at least, India has become increasingly complicated. Well, in the context of queerness, India is a very complicated place. In the context of Hindu nationalism, it is a profoundly disturbing place. So I actually feel like, you know, of the parts of my identity of the intersections, like my queerness, my Appalachianness, and my Indianness, like I feel like oftentimes I look at my Indianness and I'm like, I don't know how to make sense of this. Like, because the things that are reflected as being Indian in that context, I'm like, I don't ascribe to any of those things. I'm not Islamophobic and I'm not a Hindu nationalist and I am not a homophobe and I'm not all the things that you all are espousing right now. So like, and that's my family that I'm talking about, not my parents, but my extended family, like the values and beliefs that they're espousing. I'm like, I don't connect with you. Like we're not the same, right? Um, Having a kid has made that all even more complicated. Because it's, you know, like I want her to have the parts of identity that like have meaning for, you know, like, and there's also parts that are automated. So I like sing her to sleep every night and I sing her Country Roads. I sing her I Remember Everything by John Prine. And then I sing 3 Hindu bhajans that my mom sang me every night that I don't even believe in God, but like it's just like automated in me, right? It's like I'm trying to soothe the baby. How was I soothed? This is what soothed me. I'm gonna try it. And like now it's just what we're doing. So it's this strange experience of like there are parts of all of this that like when I mother her in Gujarati because that's how I was mothered, right? That's the language I know to mother in. And sometimes I'm like, that didn't sound right. I need to do it again in another language because I don't like how that came out. But it is this hard constant thing of like how much of culture is automated in us in such a way that it just shows up. And then like how do we look at it critically and kind of think about, all right, are these things that I want to show up or are there pieces of this that I need to put down, right? There's an essay in another Appalachia that's about shame, right? And like I think about the fact that when like I was little and I was naked, the word that people would say if you were naked was shame, shame. I'm not doing that with my kid, right? We're not going to do that. I have to be able to sort of like be critical about culture. We all do. Like there are parts of everyone's cultures that are beautiful, and there are parts of everybody's culture that probably need to get let go. And so the work for me is about like, how do I engage in that instead of feeling like an obligation or a pressure to like replicate something that I'm like, I don't actually think full replication here is the goal. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I've not read it, but I'm looking forward to it. Oh, this is crazy.
In Mountville?
And I say that a lot of what you say is not even just like white supremacist, but like so like West Virginia thing is so embedded traditionally then inside like in Hindu. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, there's a shame of queerness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's just so much othering.
Yeah.
You know.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to talk about the ups and downs because I very little in common with you, but reading your book really made me see what we had in common. I think that books are important for that.
Absolutely.
More than anything else as well.
Yes.
That it shows us what we all.
Yeah, and that's a really important point, right? You're not in the same way that I get the messages from the people who are like, I have a mirror, I also get messages from people who are like, I have nothing in common with you, but like, here is what this made me think about, or here's how it made me see things differently, or here's like the connection that I made. Somebody wrote to me who was actually from Iowa, but white, and was like, this is the way that this made me think about my Iowan upbringing, or whatever else. I mean, books. There's a really amazing scholar, Black scholar. She's a Black feminist scholar named Rudine Sims Phillips, and she talks about the fact that books can be mirrors, they can be windows, or they can be sliding doors, right? And you need all three. So I think that's 100% right. Yep, in the back. Well, so actually Jessica came in and brought me this, which I'm super excited about. Cynthia Ryland's book, Appalachia, The Voices of Sleeping Birds. I have a massive Cynthia Ryland storybook collection for my daughter, which again is like a funny thing. She's growing up in the heart of Boston. So like, I don't really know how When I Was Young in the Mountains is going to resonate for her, but it resonates for me a lot. So I keep sharing it with her, hoping that like somehow she'll be like, and I take her to Appalachia a lot too. So I'm like, there will be some overlap here, maybe. But I think children's literature is such an, well, I'm going to say it has been an incredibly exciting place. Like there is this real explosion of like diverse voices, own voices in that space that I feel like means every time I go in a bookstore, I'm like so excited about the books that exist and are possible. I just walked by Riverstones, and this really great book, Molly's Tuxedo, is in the front window there. It's written by Dickie Johnson, who actually lives in West Virginia. And like there just is this beautiful representation of queer identity, trans identity, biracial identity, like all those things are really present in children's literature. And also, I think that publishing is seeing a pretty intense backlash in the same way that the rest of the country is also experiencing that backlash. And so I kind of have questions. We've seen 3 Black women who are very high positions as editors in the Big 5 lose their jobs in the last month. Most of whom were hired in 2020, right? And so I have a friend who's a queer middle grade writer who was I saw her last night. She was talking about how much of a harder time she's having selling this book than she had for her previous 2. So I guess, again, it's like one of those places where I think volume is really important, because like the publishing industry responds to what they think the sort of like hunger is or appetite is for their books. And I think they've decided that there's not the same appetite. And I don't think that's true. but I think getting them to see that is going to require a lot of vocal push. That's awesome. That's beautiful. And that's starting, I feel like that is a trend that I'm seeing like in lots of cities. We just actually in Boston, in Somerville, a new bookstore opened called Narrative, which centers immigrant voices. We have a bookstore called All She Wrote Books, which is a queer and feminist bookstore. This idea that bookstores can be havens for people is so profound. I think that like that can happen. Like I think White Whale does that without having an identity specific marker. I feel like White Whale is that place for so many people. But also I did a reading last year in New York at a place called You and Me Books, which is in Chinatown, which is a bookstore that is full of immigrant stories. And, the readers who are coming there and the questions they have, it's like, oh, like there's this like instant connection because we're all there for the same thing. And it gives me, I think, a lot of hope to see people creating like visible community in this way that's like, this is a way we can build with each other, right? Is we can make these spaces and be really clear about who we're hoping to serve in this space. Yeah.
Talking about people who are relating to you or you don't relate, and figure out for you how you relate in the world and all that. Struck me that really has been, those issues have been affecting people for as long as there's been migration.
Yeah.
And every generation. Address these issues and reflect on them and keep that going. But maybe what's easier exactly more awareness of these issues. But my generation, the woman who I looked up to a lot, I was wondering if you ever came across her, Pravashi Baid.
Lawyer, incredible activist. Yes. I never had the privilege of meeting her, but I know lots of people who did know her very well. Yeah, no. And her nibbling, Alok, does really incredible work also, of a different kind of like, it looks different. It's more in the sort of like social media, public speaking space. But Alok is doing a lot of work to, I think, get people to think about gender and identity in ways that push their thinking. But no, I never had the pleasure. I wish I did. Yeah.
By that I mean like writing.
Yeah.
Like I put the first draft in my pile here then on the mountain.
Yeah.
How
I mean, I think the funny thing when I was writing that book is like a big question in the book is like, am I Appalachian? Never mind, am I an Appalachian writer? Like, can I call myself Appalachian, right? Because like that word when I was growing up did not get used to describe people like me. That word had a generationality behind it of like people. I mean, I have neighbors who like their families have been in Appalachia for 8 generations, right? My family moved there in 1972. Like it's not the same thing. And can I claim this? And I didn't. Like one of the core questions in that book is like, what is my relationship to this place, right? What was so powerful for me after the book came out was the way that Appalachian writers responded to it. One of the most beautiful things that has happened to me in this experience is there's an incredible Appalachian writer who's queer named Anne Pancake. If you have not read her work, you have to read her work. River Stones actually has her beautiful novel Strange as This Weather has been on display. And it came out in 2007. So props to them for like continuing to champion this book, which is phenomenal. But Anne talked to me about how she saw my book fitting into Appalachian literature, like how she understood what I was doing as deeply Appalachian. So she was talking to me about like in Appalachian writing, place is a character. Place is as much of a character as people are. And I was like, huh, that's interesting, right? And recently I heard her give a talk and she was talking about how lyricism is this real feature of Appalachian writing because so much of the storytelling that we've heard has been oral storytelling, that really infuses the way that we write. And I had another one of those moments, because this second collection is like really lyric in a way that's like very weird for me. It's not what I think my voice is, but it's the voice that's coming out. And I was like, I don't think this book is really Appalachian at all. And then here comes Anne being like, and you're wrong. Here's how it is, right? So in some ways, I feel like I continually need other people to tell me that I'm an Appalachian writer. That said, I think that I own that identity now, right? In a way that feels really important to me and feels like I have a lot of responsibility. Like, I want to make sure that I understand Appalachia now, not just the Appalachia I grew up in, but the questions that exist now and the sort of the challenges that exist in this moment. And so, since the book came out, I think I've been home at least 5 times each year since the book has came out. My child's gone to Appalachia a lot of times. My New York born partner is very salty about the fact that she's been to Appalachia like 6 times. She's been to Brooklyn once. We only live 4 hours from Brooklyn. She's right. She's right to feel that way. But like, what's been so powerful is like, I think when I wrote this book, I was like writing from away and I felt away. And since publishing the book, I feel like there's this whole new set of relationships and community that I've been connected to. And it feels like I feel closer to home than I have at any point since I lived there. And that's been really powerful, to sort of see the ways in which people in Appalachia are reading this book and feeling like, no, yeah, you might be away, but the questions you're asking are our questions. And like, you're one of us, right? I was actually just home in April. The ACLU of West Virginia gave me their Founders Award for work that I've been doing to support queer youth in West Virginia. Like, that is a thing that I never could have imagined happening ever, right? But like, it's what has happened because of this book. The book has built relationships, the book has created communities, and the book's allowed me to sort of like be in relationship in this new way. And to sort of think about, what is my obligation to place? Like, how do I fight for this place from away? How do I fight for queer youth in West Virginia? I don't live there anymore, but that doesn't mean I don't have a voice and that I can't use it and I can't push and I can't amplify and I can't like fly to Morgantown in the morning and fly back at night to go to the Queer Youth Summit. Like, I can do those things. And so I try to figure out how to do those things as much as I can. Yeah.
Are you still teaching middle school?
I stopped last year.
So I'm also an educator.
Yeah.
Every year I pray not in time at that grade level because they are the hardest.
I love them.
They're the hardest. We also might be different.
Yeah, it's
have different like subspecialties. But I was thinking about particularly with middle school and especially with middle school girls, they're the ones that model from their teachers. And their educators and the adults in their lives. And, I know me as an educator who also has a very fragmented cultural background, it's been very difficult for me to find my own voice to help my kids find their voice.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there was ever any role model in your life, whether in person or Rogers on TV or reading Rainbow, somebody who made you feel
yeah.
Your childhood and your upbringing that really had an influence on you.
Yeah, and I mean, I am like, I grew up on the best street in the world, so some of my neighbors are in the room right now. I was so lucky I grew up on a street full of those people, like full of them, like house to house. I could tell you like all of these incredible people who just were like, we've got you, right? In all the different ways. Yesterday, my partner brought home like a Nerf basketball hoop, and we like set it up in a room, and I was like playing basketball with my daughter for the first time. And I was playing basketball with her, and I was like flooded with memories of Rick Withrow, who was one of my neighbors growing up. And he would come out on Saturday mornings to play ball with me when no one else was awake, and probably everyone was annoyed that I was down there shooting hoops, waking up the Ricks at 7:30 in the morning. My parents couldn't do those things with me. Like, my dad tried to play basketball with me once. It was a mess. Like, it was not a thing you want to ever see again. Like, but like Rick Withrow taught me how to play ball, and he taught me how to drive, because when I learned to drive, my dad took me out once and it was awful. And then it never happened again because I think Rick was like, I got it. Like, you're not gonna do that. This is not a good thing that's happening. And he would come by my house every Saturday and pick me up, and he taught me how to drive, right? And so he passed away probably 10 years ago at this point, but I like sent a picture of like Kahani playing basketball and was like, I can't stop thinking about your dad right now. Like, and then there's an essay in the book about my basketball coach, Carl Bradford, who was my basketball coach for many years, who similarly, like, my parents weren't driving me to games. Like, they couldn't do those things. They did not have time or space for that stuff. And he picked me up and dropped me off for every practice. And he took me to every game. And even when I was done, like, I aged out of the league, he was like, you're going to be my assistant coach. And he kept me like through 8th grade, probably from like 3rd grade to 8th grade. Carl Bradford, like, I saw him multiple times a week, right? And those people taught me like what it means to be in relationship with young people. But like, relationship with young people isn't what you do for a year. Like, as a teacher, like, I think I got that really early. So like right now, one of my partner's former students is staying at our house. He's 30. She had him when he was 11, right? Like, he's basically our kid. He's kind of jealous of the baby because I think it's made some complication in his sort of ability to take up all the room. I have another former student who lives in Atlanta who I went down to see over April break, who's also 30, who like I've had a relationship with for 19 years now. But I understand that is what it looks like to like support young people like that. And that is what it looks like to do it outside of the parental role, because most of the time, like, that kind of length of relationship we only ascribe to like traditional parenting paradigms, right? But for me, that wasn't the case. Like, yes, my parents play that role, but I had this whole other group of people who were like, we're in for the long haul. Like, we're with you, like, and knew, I think both of them recognized like I was having a hard time. It was not easy. And I think they saw spaces where they could make it easier. And so they just did. Um, and you know, like the Carl Bradford's kids, they're like, yeah, you were our dad's favorite child. Like, we just always were like, oh God, you know. And when I published another Appalachian, they came everywhere they lived that I did a book event, they came. And they like brought signs like you would take to a basketball game, which is not a thing people do at readings, but was happening. And they got wood from his wood garage and like wood burned me like a beautiful plaque to commemorate the book. I mean, they just like, right, all these ways in which like they then picked up that mantle. Like, he passed away and they're like, but you're still our family and we're still here, right? Like, that I learned from them. And I would say I think that stuff is profoundly Appalachian. That is not a thing that is happening all over this country. That is how people in Appalachia take care of each other. And it is a place where I just feel like the paradigms in this country around like who needs to learn what from whom are all backwards. Because I think people in Appalachia have so much to teach us all about like what it means to be in community with one another, and how you extend care and how you just do it again and again and again and again, and not in loud or showy ways, but you just keep showing up. So that's kind of how I think about teaching too. Yeah. Any other questions? One last one. Okay. Well, I will be in the back signing books. If anybody wants to come, I'm happy to sign them. Thank you all so much for coming today. It was lovely to be here with you. Oh man, I gotta have to leave again. Okay.